The call came in at 11:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. Not a 911 call, a neighbor's call. The kind that starts with, "I didn't want to worry you, but..." A family 4 blocks away had been prepared. Really prepared. Generator running in the backyard. Lights on every night while the rest of the street sat dark. Enough food stored to last months. By every measure, they had done everything right. By day 4 of the outage, 3 separate groups had come through their property. Not strangers from across town. People from the same neighborhood. People who had seen the light. People who had heard the generator. People who had done the math and decided that house, specifically that house, was worth the risk. The family was physically fine, but they spent the next 10 days in a relative's basement 2 counties away because going back didn't feel safe anymore. Here's what nobody told them, what nobody tells anyone when they start preparing. The house that survives a crisis isn't the most fortified one on the block. It's the one nobody thinks about. Preparation without invisibility isn't security. It's inventory management for other people. In the next 30 minutes, you're going to audit your own home the way a stranger would. You're going to see exactly what it's broadcasting right now, in light, in sound, in smell, in behavior, and you're going to understand 7 specific changes that shift your home from visible target to complete non-option. Most of them cost nothing. All of them start today. You spent months thinking about this. Canned food in the basement, a water filter under the sink, flashlights with backup batteries, maybe a generator sitting in the garage. You did what responsible people do. You prepared. And without realizing it, you may have painted a target on your own front door. This isn't speculation, it's a documented pattern. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, researchers interviewing survivors of home invasions that occurred within the first 6 days found something consistent. In more than 60% of cases, the intruder already had prior awareness of the home's resources, a running generator, lights on when every neighbor was dark, people moving boxes in and out at odd hours. It wasn't bad luck, it was signaling. The issue isn't that you prepared. The issue is that visible preparation in a resource-scarce environment functions like an advertisement. You're not communicating security, you're communicating inventory. Think about that for a second. On a street where every house is dark and yours isn't, what are you telling everyone who walks by? You're telling them something's in there. This video isn't about gutting your prep, it's about making it invisible. 7 concrete changes, most of them free, that shift your home from target to non-option. The first change starts tonight. Most people don't think of light as a security risk. They think of locks, cameras, maybe a dog. But in a prolonged power outage, the kind that stretches past 72 hours into days and then weeks, light becomes the single most dangerous thing you can broadcast. Here's why. Human vision in low-light environments is tuned to detect contrast, not brightness. A candle behind a thin curtain isn't a soft glow. To someone standing outside in complete darkness, it's a beacon. It draws the eye the same way a lit window draws yours when you're driving down an unlit road at night. You can't not look. FEMA's own post-disaster behavioral assessments, published after both Katrina and Hurricane Maria, noted that homes with visible light sources during extended blackouts were disproportionately targeted for forced entry during the first week of grid failure, not because the light itself was valuable, but because it confirmed occupancy and activity when neighbors appeared vacant. So what do? You don't go dark completely. That creates its own problems. A house that looks suddenly and unnaturally abandoned also attracts attention. Instead, you control the direction of your light. Blackout curtains on primary living spaces, light sources positioned low, pointed inward, movement kept away from windows after dark. This is called light discipline. It's standard practice in field operations and disaster response. It costs you nothing but awareness. Tonight, walk outside your own house after dark while someone inside turns on a light. What can you see? Where does it leak? That's your audit. That's where you start. Light gets all the attention, but 2 other signals are just as dangerous, and almost no one accounts for them. Sound and smell. Sound first. A generator running is audible from 300 feet away on a quiet night. That range doubles in a neighborhood where there's no ambient traffic noise, no HVAC hum, no background city sound, which is exactly what a multi-day power outage sounds like. You know what else carries that far? A radio, a television running off a battery pack, children playing inside. A normal household sounds completely different from a vacant one, and in a crisis environment, that difference is information. The fix isn't silence. Complete silence from an occupied home is its own red flag. The fix is managing your acoustic profile, keeping sound inside, running generators at strategic intervals rather than continuously, positioning noisy appliances away from exterior walls. Now smell. This one surprises people every time. Cooking food produces a scent plume that travels downwind for hundreds of yards. In a neighborhood where most people haven't had a hot meal in 2 days, the smell of something cooking doesn't just trigger hunger. It triggers attention. It triggers questions about who has what. And in the wrong circumstances, it triggers decisions. This doesn't mean you stop cooking. It means you cook at low signature times, early morning when wind patterns are minimal and fewer people are moving through the area. It means you use covered cookware whenever possible. It means you're aware that what you're making inside your house doesn't stay inside your house. Light, sound, smell. 3 signals, 3 disciplines. None of them require a single dollar to manage. Your windows aren't just openings, they're screens. And right now they're probably showing a movie about your life to anyone who cares to watch. This isn't about paranoia, it's about information management. A shadow moving across a lit curtain tells an observer that someone is home and awake. A half-open blind at eye level creates a sight line directly into your living space. A window-mounted air conditioner signals that you have electricity when your neighbors don't. A stack of supplies visible through a garage window tells a specific story about how ready you are. None of these things feel dangerous in normal circumstances. That's the point. You've spent years not thinking about what your windows communicate because it never mattered. In an extended crisis, it starts to matter on day 2. The solution is layered and mostly free. Heavy curtains or blackout panels on rooms you occupy at night. Installed now, not during a crisis when everyone will notice the change. Furniture and storage arranged so that valuables and supplies aren't in the sightline of any exterior window. Ground floor windows assessed from the outside, in daylight, with fresh eyes. Here's the exercise. Walk your perimeter. Every window, every angle. Ask one question for each. What story does this tell? Not to you, to someone who doesn't know you and is looking for reasons to choose your house over your neighbors. If your windows are currently telling the wrong story, the fix takes an afternoon. If you wait until you need the fix, you've already been read. Everything up to this point has been about reducing what you broadcast. This part is about expanding what you receive. Situational awareness, knowing what's approaching before it arrives, is worth more in a crisis than any lock, camera, or reinforced door. A lock stops someone who's already at your threshold. Awareness gives you time, and time is the only resource in an emergency that cannot be replaced. Most people think early warning systems mean cameras, motion sensors, smart doorbells. All of those are grid dependent. All of them fail in exactly the scenario where you need them most. Here's what doesn't fail. $12 of fishing line from any hardware store, run at ankle height across the 2 most likely approach paths to your home, connected to a set of small bells or a simple mechanical noisemaker. Not sophisticated, not tactical, effective. This same basic perimeter alert concept has been used in conflict zones from Vietnam to present-day disaster response field camps. The technology is irrelevant. The principle that you want to know before they arrive, not after, is universal. Beyond the physical tripwire, there's a behavioral layer. Dogs, even small ones, are among the most reliable early warning systems available. They don't need Wi-Fi. They don't have a monthly subscription fee. Their hearing range operates at frequencies and distances that no consumer camera system matches. And then there's neighbor intelligence, a reciprocal awareness agreement with 1 or 2 households you trust. Not a prepper group, not a formal arrangement, just a quiet understanding. If you see something, you tell me. I do the same for you. Most threats announce themselves before they arrive. The question is whether you've built the system to hear them. Here's something the home security industry won't tell you. A visible reinforced door heavy steel frame, multiple deadbolts, obvious security hardware, communicates one thing with perfect clarity. There is something behind this door worth protecting. You've spent money to signal to every passerby that your home has contents that justify serious deterrence. That is the opposite of invisible. Real structural reinforcement, the kind that actually stops a forced entry, doesn't need to announce itself. A standard residential door fails not at the lock but at the door jamb. The wood around the strike plate splinters on the second kick in most cases. The fix is a $25 steel strike plate with 3-inch screws that anchor into the structural frame, not just the door trim. It looks identical to the original hardware. It performs at a completely different level. The same logic applies to sliding glass doors, which can be lifted off their tracks from outside regardless of whether they're locked. A simple cut-down wooden dowel or a $7 Charlie bar laid in the track eliminates that vulnerability entirely. It's invisible. It requires no installation. It works. Window locks on double-hung windows are, in most American homes, a single latch that a 6-year-old could defeat. Secondary window pins, a hardened steel pin through a drilled hole in the frame, add a second mechanical barrier that has no visible exterior presence. None of this looks like a fortress. That's the point. The home that survives isn't the one that looks impenetrable. It's the one that looks like every other house on the block, and is quietly, significantly harder to get into than it appears. If this is making you rethink how your own doors and windows are set up right now, hit that like button. It tells us to keep making videos that actually show you what most channels skip over. This is the part most preparedness channels never reach. Not because it's complicated, because it requires you to think like the person you're trying to deter. And most people are uncomfortable doing that. Here's what the research on opportunistic intrusion during civil disruptions tells us consistently. The typical resource-seeking intruder in a disaster scenario is not a trained operative. They're a person under stress making rapid decisions with incomplete information. They're looking for the fastest possible return with the lowest possible risk. When they find something, they take it and leave. They are not conducting a thorough search. They're satisfying a threshold. That threshold is your weapon. A visible, accessible, low-value cache, a box in an obvious location containing a few cans of food, some basic supplies, maybe $20 in small bills, exists to satisfy that threshold before the intruder reaches your actual resources. You're not giving up anything critical. You're purchasing an exit. Documented cases from post-Katrina New Orleans, the 2011 Joplin tornado aftermath, and the 2020 civil unrest period in multiple U.S. cities show a consistent pattern. Opportunistic intruders who found accessible resources early in a search disengage faster and with less property damage than those who found nothing on initial survey. You're not surrendering, you're redirecting. Place the decoy where it will be found first: a hall closet, a visible shelf near an entry point. Keep your real stores somewhere mundane, unlabeled, and out of the primary sight line. A water heater closet, an unremarkable set of bins in the garage labeled with old holiday decoration labels, a pantry that looks half-stocked by design. The best security system you have is the ability to make someone feel like they've already found what they came for. You've controlled your light. You've reinforced your doors. You've built an early warning system and positioned a decoy stash. Your house, from the outside, looks like every other house on the block, and then your neighbor mentions to someone at the gas station that the family down the street has been completely fine, never missed a meal, lights on every night. Everything you built just got undermined by someone who means you no harm. This is the vulnerability that no hardware solution addresses because it isn't a hardware problem, it's a social one. And it's the most likely vector through which your preparation becomes visible because the people who know about it are people you trust, and people you trust talk. This isn't a reason to distrust your neighbors. It's a reason to think carefully about what you share, with whom, and at what level of specificity. There's a difference between a neighbor knowing you have some extra supplies and a neighbor knowing you have 3 months of food, a water filtration system, and a generator with 50 gallons of fuel. The first piece of information is harmless. The second is a map. The practical discipline here is compartmentalization. You can be a good neighbor, check in, share small things, maintain relationships without broadcasting your full inventory. If a crisis comes, the neighbors who are allied with you will be a force multiplier for your security. The key is building those alliances carefully, based on observed trustworthiness over time, not desperation in the moment. Have you thought about this one? Drop a comment below. Do you think your neighbors knowing you're prepared is an asset or a liability? I read every response. Every change you've made so far lives inside your perimeter. But your perimeter doesn't start at your front door. It starts with how you move in the world the moment things go wrong. What you carry when you leave the house, how you talk or don't talk about your situation, what your car communicates in a parking lot, what your body language says in a line at a gas station when fuel is scarce and you're not visibly stressed because you already have what you need at home. Calm in a crowd of anxious people is readable, and it reads as, "This person has something we don't." This concept, managing your public profile during an elevated stress environment, is what the preparedness community calls Grayman theory. The idea isn't to be invisible in the literal sense, it's to be unremarkable. To give no one a reason to remember you specifically, ask questions about you specifically, or make decisions about you specifically. In practice, this means several things. Driving a vehicle that doesn't advertise your politics, your affiliations, or your preparedness orientation. Not discussing your home setup in public or semi-public conversations during a crisis period. Dressing in a way that doesn't signal resources. No high-end tactical gear. No visible weapons in contexts where they create attention rather than safety. It also means the conversations you have with your children. Kids talk. They talk at school, to friends' parents. In a normal environment, your child mentioning that you have a lot of food stored at home is an amusing anecdote. In a resource-scarce environment, it's an intelligence leak. This is not about scaring your kids. It's about having an age-appropriate conversation about privacy. A conversation that is valuable in dozens of contexts beyond emergency preparedness. Your home's invisibility begins 2 miles away from it. Every change so far has been physical or behavioral. This one is psychological, and it may be the most effective of all 7. Experienced law enforcement and security professionals who study residential burglary patterns have identified something counterintuitive. A house that shows subtle signs of prior disturbance is significantly less likely to be targeted for a second approach than one that appears untouched. The psychology is straightforward. An intruder, especially an opportunistic one under time pressure, is performing a rapid risk-reward calculation. A house that looks like it's already been visited suggests depleted resources and elevated risk of encountering someone defensive. The rational move is to move on. You can deliberately engineer this signal. A small amount of controlled exterior disorder, a knocked-over plant pot near the entry, a porch chair slightly displaced, a visible scratch on the door frame consistent with prior forced entry, communicates prior targeting without communicating current value. You're not making your house look abandoned. You're making it look already evaluated. This sounds extreme. It isn't. It's the same principle that leads retailers to keep certain shelves visibly sparse during shortages. An empty shelf communicates nothing left here more powerfully than any sign. You're using that same cognitive shortcut deliberately. Combined with a working decoy stash, light discipline, and behavioral Grayman practices, this psychological layer creates a complete picture. A house that has been noticed, found wanting, and passed over. A house that costs more to investigate than it's worth. That's the goal. Not a fortress, not a bunker, a non-option. Everything in this video is only useful if it's actually implemented. And the problem with preparation, any kind of preparation, is that it's easy to understand intellectually and easy to defer practically. So here's the test. Run it this weekend. Wait until after dark. Walk outside your house. Go to the sidewalk in front. Look at your home the way someone unfamiliar with it would look at it. Someone who doesn't know you, doesn't know your family, doesn't know your habits. Someone who is simply scanning the block, making decisions. What do you see? Is there light leaking? Is there sound? Is there a visible generator? a visible supply container, a window that gives a sightline into a room with contents you'd rather not broadcast? Is your front door visually distinct from your neighbors in ways that invite scrutiny? Write it down. Not mentally. Physically write it down. Vulnerabilities that exist only in your memory have a way of staying unaddressed. Vulnerabilities on a list with a checkbox get fixed, then do it from the back of the house, from the side, from the alley if there is one. This is your audit. It takes 45 minutes. It costs nothing. It is more valuable than any product in any preparedness catalog because it's specific to your actual home, your actual layout, your actual vulnerabilities, not a generalized threat model built around someone else's house. The families who fare best in prolonged disruptions aren't necessarily the most stocked or the most armed. They're the most clear-eyed about where they're actually exposed. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. This is the kind of content we build every week. No filler, no product pitches, no panic. Just clear thinking for people who take their family safety seriously. This entire video has been built around one principle. The best outcome is the threat that never reaches your door. But you're an adult. You know that principles have limits. Sometimes, despite everything, the light discipline, the reinforced jams, the decoy stash, the behavioral protocols, something still arrives at your threshold. A scenario too large, too organized, or too close to ignore. What then? This part isn't a tactical breakdown of defensive options. That's a different video. What it is an honest conversation about the one thing that all the physical preparation in the world cannot replace. A family that has talked through what happens, assigned roles, and made decisions before the adrenaline hits. FEMA's community preparedness research consistently identifies one of the strongest predictors of household survival in an extended disruption. Prior family communication about emergency roles, not gear, not supplies. Communication, who does what, where you go if the house is compromised, what the signal is, what the rule is for the children. A home that is physically invisible but internally unprepared is a home where the crisis happens fast and the response happens slow. Everything you've built in the last 30 minutes of this video gets undermined the moment two people in the same house have two different instincts about what to do next and no prior agreement to resolve the conflict. Have the conversation, not a drill. Not a document, a dinner table conversation this week about the 2 or 3 scenarios most plausible in your area, what your home can absorb and what it can't. Invisible is the goal. Ready is the foundation. One without the other is incomplete. Go outside tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight. Stand on the sidewalk in front of your house and look at it like you've never seen it before, like you don't know who lives there, like you're making a decision about it. What do you see? That's the only question that matters right now. Not which filter to buy, not which lock to upgrade. What does your house communicate to someone who doesn't know you and is looking for reasons to choose you over your neighbor? If this video changed how you see that question, share it with one person who owns a home. Not because it's alarming, because it's something most people spend years not thinking about, and one conversation can change that. And leave a comment with the one thing you're going to fix first. The light leak, the unlabeled garage bins, the conversation you haven't had with your family yet. Write it down here, publicly, because the things we say out loud are the things we actually do. Your home doesn't need to be a fortress. It needs to be forgettable. That's the whole game.